Geek Tank Radio, News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today, we're joining you from Aquaman's underwater bathroom. Good, I didn't really want to know how this operated, Alan, and a little TMI right now.
Yeah,
Some of these things are better left unknown.
How does Aquaman's stable work?
I don't know, man.
Let's just say SpongeBob doesn't look happy.
At least Aquaman knows how to use the 3 seashells.
Okay,
That's true. He
there
does.
we go. Yeah, maybe we ought to move it along. Anyway, welcome
That's what they said.
they're moving it along down here. Anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson, here with my friends Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max behind the glass, and our special guest, Scott J. Carroll, because apparently Brandon lost his voice. I think he lost it from the Joe Bob Briggs horror convention we were at last week.
He did.
He hasn't recovered. The good news on that front is if we make fun of him or if we say something that's bound to trigger him, he can't react. I mean, he can, he can type his displeasure, but he can't call us or harass us. So,
that's about it.
So, Brandon, you're out on your own, man. It's fair game. But hey, Scott, you're a buddy of Alan's from over from Geeky Side TV, darkoakmedia.com. We love your story times, that you do on Geeky Side TV. I highly encourage you folks. One thing I like about Scott, you seem very attuned to the notion of the low attention span audience, right? I don't think any of your videos are over 10 minutes, right?
Some of them. With the Entertainment Spotlight show, the kind of travel show that I've been working on lately, those are about a half hour. I'm showing off what's going on, the different conventions and other places that we go to. But I also do like to create what I call bathroom videos. You got a break at work. You got, 5 to 8 minutes.
Right.
You need to get away from your desk for a little bit. A little bit of entertainment while you're hiding from the boss.
Absolutely. So we may talk about that, but actually you're here for another discussion. You want to talk about how fantasy and really all the geek genres going mainstream is both good and bad, and we know all about that. So we're good. We're gonna look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Actually, all of us are kicking in today. Max, you have I guess we're gonna call this a deep cut. It's not okay. First of all, if you haven't seen the Orville season 3, we strongly encourage you to do it. Every episode is great, but you wanted to build off of something that happened in episode 7. Not necessarily to even talk about the episode, but
it's less of a plot summary and more of a question that it provoked.
It does provoke a lot of questions, and man, it's just going great. I wish there was more than 10 episodes. I think it's gonna, they better get a season 4. The way this is going, they've really finally found their stride.
They're kind of geared up, They've really got a good, solid thing going this.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good. I'm going to throw in. It's a fantastically maturing show.
It's great, man. It's finally hitting
really
its
got
stride.
their feet, man.
Yeah. We sort of missed this, Alan. Later in the show, I want to talk about the Black Adam trailer. We just sort of glanced over that. We've got The Rock, playing an anti-hero. There's also a lot of other cool characters in this, and this movie looks like it's going to be a little bit of a different offering from DC. And we feel like we need to gear up and get ready for this. So, but Alan, before we get to any of that, we've got some science, right?
Well, I don't know. Do we have any science?
There's science somewhere.
There's science somewhere. How about the fact that the largest comet ever just buzzed the Earth?
Okay, I threw you a softball. I thought we were going to talk about the James Webb
are.
Telescope.
We
Okay,
are.
don't leave.
Hail science!
Okay, there we
I was
go.
waiting on my hill science.
Max was a little late to the cue.
I tossed a comet up to give him a moment to press the button.
Okay, so Alan, the comet, great. It's going to hit us and kill us. What's going on with James Webb?
Let's go back to the Hubble.
Okay.
2017, it noticed a rock and went, hey, this thing's coming.
It noticed the rock.
It noticed the rock. There you go.
It said Black Adam's coming.
There you go.
Okay.
This thing's coming our way. It's going to pass the Earth. This is one of the biggest comets we've ever seen or ever found. And you can still see it by binoculars tonight if you want to.
Alan, I don't know if there's a rule of thumb, sorry, but if a and I interrupt.
He's already got the finger up. He's ready.
When we think of that, a comet, it could branch off and hit the Earth, right?
Yes.
Okay. At what, I picture size-wise, if you get a comet the size of a watermelon, that's bad. It's not apocalyptic, but
Right.
how big does it get when we are in real trouble? Like
About a third the size of this one.
okay, all right, well, go ahead. Sorry, all right. I was queuing. I wasn't sure because that's how I rate comets.
Yeah,
so,
this would have been a bad comet to get slammed into us. It is affectionately being called K2, and it was found by the Hubble just before the James Webb technology and all that began projecting where we were going to put the telescope and everything. So this is a great transitional period, and this didn't exactly sneak up on us, but it's here. It did not come close enough to us in our orbit around the sun to get the big famous comet tail.
Okay.
But you can still see it by binoculars if you so desire, or any of your friends with a telescope.
Now, is this the one that came from outside the solar system?
No, this one's from the cloud.
Oh, okay.
So this is a local boy. He makes a trip every couple of million years. So we're excited to have him, and everybody's having a lot of fun because the Hubble's been taking pictures of this coming in. Well, guess who's taking pictures as he's going out?
Well, here we go.
Yeah, we're firing up the.
You didn't tell me how big it
guns.
was, though. How big is this thing, roughly? I'm picturing a comet the size of a school bus. That's going to cause real damage. Anything bigger than that, then we're talking about wiping out, like, Texas or something, right?
This would have probably punched a hole through Jupiter.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's not a small comet by any stretch of the imagination. This is huge.
Okay, all right, but James Webb, for folks that don't know, which I don't know how you don't know, but that is the telescope that's been launched. It's parked about 1 million miles away from Earth to lose any light pollution or light reflection from the Earth, and it went off almost flawlessly. And this thing's going to be 100 times more powerful than the Hubble, which that just blows my mind.
Currently is.
And it's functioning very well, and now they're sending us pictures. So,
and the pictures, as we'd like to say, have been developed.
Yeah.
So I thought K2 was a great introduction because Hubble picked up the ball millions of miles away, got wonderful pictures of this thing coming in, and once it comes around the sun and comes out, we're going to do 100 times better.
Yeah.
So if there's anything on this comet, as you guys come around the outside, hold up your signs and smile. We're going to be able to read it.
And what's fascinating is how they determine how big the comets are.
Yeah.
I was actually honestly watching a TED Talk about this the other night because, huge nerd. But the way they measure the size of it is through the reflectivity of how the sun reflects off of the comet. They're able to look at that and go, okay, we're seeing this much light coming off, so it's most likely made of this material. And if we're getting this much light coming off of it and it being that material, it's the size of a bus or whatever.
That's pretty brilliant. I mean, something that far away. That's interesting. So,
well, this is going to be nice and close. Now, the James Webb Space Telescope has been a radical departure from other telescope ideas.
Okay.
And the fact that it looks like a leftover prop from any number of sci-fi movies.
It's a Star Wars. I mean, it's a battle cruiser. That's what it looks like with an oversized satellite.
Yeah,
dish.
if you saw this fly through the screen at the beginning of a movie, you would know somebody was going to get shot at.
Right.
Instead, what we have is an amazing platform, and we got a lot of gold. We got a lot of we put some precious metals out there, and the results. If you haven't seen a James Webb picture yet,
oh, they're gorgeous.
Just go to any local computer, cell phone, or whatever. Look it up. Do whatever search engine you want.
And then behold the memes.
And the memes are already starting,
which
tells you that it's mainstream. Because, hey, folks, full disclosure, here at Geek Tank Radio, we keep you on the cutting edge. We were talking about the James Webb Telescope, I want to say like 6 years ago, when they were just conceiving and building the thing. So, now everybody else is catching up. So, which is a good thing. I think the more people that are interested in space science. Can we do one thing, though, Alan? I have one request. Can we point the thing back at Earth and just put these flat earthers out of business so they can see, look, you guys, we're round. Or, of course, they wouldn't buy that. They'd say it's fixed.
Well,
right? It's a
we
rigged.
did that with a Kodak back in the 60s.
And they still won't buy it.
You can actually see the curvature of the Earth from an airplane.
Right.
You know, and
if you go to, I've seen footage from the top of Mount Everest.
Right.
And you can not only see the curvature of the Earth, you can actually see the gradient going darker up in the sky because you're that close to the top of the atmosphere.
You're that close to not having any more air.
Anyway, yeah, it's just one of my pet peeves.
I know. It's one of your pet peeves, but, you know, I think their website said it all when it said they have members all around the globe.
Allan, I gotta, and we. I wish we had more time for this, but I do want another question. They've just recently posted. Okay, they've been posting pictures of galaxies that at one point were just a little blur. Now they're a lot crisper.
They're amazing.
However, they also did some local pictures. You could say of Jupiter.
Yes,
it was real red. So they're measuring not just. It's not like they're just pointing it and looking. They're measuring infrared. They're measuring, and in that shot is a great picture of the moon Europa, which is covered in ice and water and everything. So,
all right, to answer your question, we're gonna say really briefly. Remember when they built the space shuttles?
Yeah.
That was basically technology from the 60s and 70s that we launched into space in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
The Hubble came along, and the Hubble was amazing. Then we gave the Hubble a contact lens. The Hubble got more amazing. The Hubble did an amazing job. But the Hubble is 40-year-old technology.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
it's analog,
kudos.
right?
Yes, I mean kudos. It's a camera.
Right.
Now, we're 50 to 60 years ahead of the U.S. space program in the James Webb. We are truly in the digital era here.
Yeah.
And this thing has correction systems. This has focusing systems. This has everything we could possibly throw at it for the next 50 years. With the technology we have on hand. So when we flung this thing around, and we've been looking at Jupiter for a while.
Of course.
We've been watching the storm. We've been looking at the moons and that kind of stuff. But now we have a telescope 1 million miles closer to it, and it can truly detect everything we have learned in the last 50 years.
Yeah. And we got to get our buddy Jeremy Veldman in, because one neat thing, and I think we're going to make this happen, one of the professors over at the University of Memphis has already booked, I believe he has 29 hours booked on the James Webb Telescope for his research coming up, I believe, in January. So we got to get that guy in there and see if we can learn more about what they're going to. I don't know what his research is going to be, but can you imagine that? That's a pretty exciting thing.
This telescope is so powerful that we are honestly looking through time. Mm-hmm. Isn't that amazing?
Back at light, yeah. I mean, light
well,
that was projected.
The amount of time it took light to get to us, where we're, depending upon where we're focusing the telescope, we're actually looking back in time to when that light source actually originated.
Yeah.
Those pictures are how many million years old?
Yes.
Well,
they're just astounding. But the simple fact is that they also built a telescope so we can swing it around to our local neighborhood.
Well, it seems like they're going to do that. They're going to probably, because I guess there's some interesting things happening on Neptune right now. And there's some, so instead of having to launch its own individual probe, you can point it around, you know.
This is where I'm going to torture Brandon for just a moment and go, picture the capitalistic glee Brandon would have in his eye that we now have a telescope powerful enough to pick through the meteor cloud.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, we're talking about space mining. You know, this is a big topic for us that we've talked about this many, many times. Well, we want to go find that iron meteorite and go get one. Well, congratulations. We now have a tool that can find it.
Right. Yeah, and you can plot its trajectory.
We can
get the spaceship
know
ready, Scott, and blast up, go mine this baby.
This is,
but do we have a bunch of miners that we can train as astronauts?
They're working on it right now.
They are at the University of Colorado learning right now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then good.
You can actually get a degree in basically space mining.
Yeah.
All right, Aerosmith, get they're going to do the graduation ceremony.
Yeah.
So now picture what happens when they swing this baby around and start taking some pictures of the moon.
Oh, I mean, it's gonna be good. Allan, let's get some regular reports, because we could honestly spend the whole show talking about this. But
well, they just talk about oxygen on the moon.
Yeah.
You know, you want to find where the water is hidden in the crater? Let me take a picture down in the crater for you. Mars, you want to find that next spot that's the perfect place to put the rover? Now we've got a telescope that can really power its way in and get pictures. I can't wait to see what it comes up with on Venus.
No, it's great, man.
Because we've heard such interesting reports there. So hang on, guys. The James Webb hadn't even got started good yet.
Yeah. So we're going to definitely be reporting in on that. That's very exciting. But Alan, I wanted to weigh in. Let's throw this. I want to talk about the Black Adam trailer. I don't remember when it dropped. Honestly, it's been like over a month. It kind of happened in the middle of a lot of other things, but it kind of went under the radar for us. But it's actually going to. I think it could be a very pivotal DC movie. Basically, I don't know a whole lot about Black Adam other than it looks like he's an anti-hero played by The Rock, and I honestly can't remember the last time The Rock has played a villain besides like the Scorpion King or something like
Doom.
that. Or
in the Doom, the terrible but fun to watch
Doom
with friends Doom movie with Carl Urban and The Rock, and I can't remember anybody else who was in it.
Is that the one with the really terrible CGI or something like
It
that?
wasn't great.
It wasn't good.
That's probably why I don't
It
remember
wasn't good.
So.
Well, unfortunately, they shot it in the same format as the video game.
Because
using
they had,
a lot of the
it's based on a
same
video game.
Yeah, plus the setup shots were mostly from the video game.
Yeah.
So it didn't do so hot.
Okay, but so the what's interesting about this is we've had all sorts. What I like about DC is it's not a monotone. What's the word? It's not. Every movie has its own texture. You have Joker or Batman or Aquaman, which is almost like a comedy Lord of the Rings vibe or something like that. So you don't really, there's no cookie cutter DCU recipe. So I don't know what we're going to get here, but there's some interesting characters. There's Dr. Fate. There's Black Adam. There's who else is in this movie? I mean,
I don't know. You raise a good point, though. The DC movies have all been very, almost from a writing standpoint, it feels like they don't know which way to go with them because they all have such different feel.
See, I think that's a good thing, though.
Maybe
it's not. I think it's good that you don't just plug it in and okay, this is a Marvel movie. We know what a Marvel movie looks like. I like that you don't know what a DC movie looks like, personally.
Well, again, we've talked about learning from your past.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say mistakes because they've made some pretty decent movies. And, if they're on cable, I'll sit down and watch them still.
See, that's a ringing endorsement. I like their movies, Alan. So, okay.
Here's the gig. Everybody especially when you get into our fantasy world, you're going to have as many critics as you have fans.
Okay.
So here, The Rock is going to take a chance, just like Schwarzenegger did with the entire Terminator franchise. Big star. Never play the villain. Big star. He plays the villain. He's still making the movies. So The Rock is going to look at this, and he's taking on a character that is basically already established. He's taking on Shazam. The wizard Shazam began looking for a successor to protect Egypt and grant all of his powers to.
And that's a whole lot different than the cheesy Captain Marvel we're talking about, right? Because let's not confuse this. Okay. Shazam is the god that gave him the power, right? Because it gets confusing. So, yeah.
So here it is, and Adam is the first mortal that he tried to imbue his powers upon.
Okay.
And that's where Adam begins. Now, the problem is the powers kind of intensify who and what you were. Again, a little.
So if you're a little
Captain America thing.
Right.
If you're a bad guy, you're going to become a bigger. You're going to become.
You're going to be the
jerk.
Red Skull. Yeah.
So here we have a typical mortal.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but
great.
He's got baggage.
That is the best word for this. And he's getting caught up in Egyptian god politics and Egyptian powers. So we're outside of the usual Nordic and the Greek.
Okay.
So we're heading into a very rich pantheon that at least in the West, we have not really deeply explored.
So the Black Adam in the comics is a pretty old character. Is this one of these?
He's been around since 45.
No, not that. I'm saying old, like Wonder Woman's old. She was around for You're saying
his powers are granted through 6 different Egyptian gods, just like Shazam.
Oh, okay.
So there is a lot of correlation between the current Shazam movies and their kind of childish corniness And there's a huge correlation to what we're going to get in Black Adam. But he's going to be the darker side of this story.
Well, and I would say keep your eye on this, folks, because like I said, Dr. Fate, if you look at the comics, he's a very interesting character if they handle him right.
Right.
There's other. I feel like it's nice to get some of these. I don't want to say outside the mainstream, but maybe lesser known characters, and especially when you get somebody who's as passionate as The Rock about doing things right. Like I mean. Say what you will, his movies are always enjoyable to watch. I mean, no matter what he's in.
He's a producer on most of his own movies, and the heart is always there. That's what's fun about watching his stuff.
Absolutely. You're listening to Geek. We hope the heart is here on Geek Tank Radio. We're trying our best, folks. You're listening to Geek Tank Radio here at News Talk 98.9 The Roar, Memphis. We're going to take a quick break, then visit with our buddy Scott J. Carroll talking about fantasy going mainstream.
Geek Tank Radio.
People of Earth, I am Lur, conqueror of your planet. Q screams. You will now remove your skulls and play dodgeball with them for my amusement.
News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis.
I mean, there's some people I could get behind seeing them do that for me. Anyway, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Alan Gilbreth. I almost said Brandon Olmstead, who is not here. He lost his voice, quote unquote, probably from that Joe Bob Briggs thing. But
did
anyway,
he lose his skull to the dodgeball tournament?
You don't know with Brandon.
No, he lost his mind a couple of times, but it's all right.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm here with my pal Alan Gilbreth, our buddy Max behind the glass, and our special guest Scott J. Carroll, who's one of Alan's associates. And if you want to learn more about Scott and his activities, among other places, you can go to darkoakmedia.com. What's your social media? Let's get that out of the way.
I'm at heart and soul a grumpy old man. I don't have a Twitter. I have Facebook. You can find me. You can look for Scott J. Carroll on Facebook, but I'm not really even on there much. I'm a terrible celebrity.
Yeah, you're great at promoting yourself. So okay.
Yeah, so that's why you go to Dark Oak Media, or you pop over to lovely things like Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah, so go to Dark Oak Media or pop over to lovely things like Spotify.
And, that YouTube place.
And that YouTube, am I saying that right? YouTube?
YouTube. Yep.
Yeah, he's not good at this. So, okay. But Scott, I sort of appreciate your, honestly, I think life was better before social media, if you want to know the truth. It keeps us connected, but the downside is it keeps us connected.
Oh,
so,
yes.
I don't have the time. Like everybody else, I work. Right. I have a wife and I have a dog and I have other responsibilities and I don't have time to sit there and scroll through my Twitter and go, oh, what did this person who I'm never going to meet say? Oh, cool.
Okay. So anyway, that's that. I can actually respect that. In a minute, we're going to get to. You wanted to talk about basically the pros and cons of all of these genres that we love going mainstream. In a little bit, Max, you've got sort of a philosophical. I don't know if it's philosophical, but it's a discussion based around Orville season 3, episode 7, which was outstanding. So.
It's any excuse to use the deep cut hotkey.
Okay. Hey, I just want to say, though, during the break, Alan was getting me up to speed. You could have done this during the segment, Alan, with Black Adam. You were our Black Adam expert, but when you were unpacking some of the characters, it's going to have Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Isis, which that one's intrigued me because I watched the ISIS TV show when I was a kid. I feel like we're going to revisit this Black Adam movie and unpack it a little. And I'd like to do it when Brandon's here as well because... I think we're going to have to dive deep into this, but
because they're going to pick up Cyclone of the Mercenaries. They're going to be doing a lot of globe trotting in this.
Yeah, so keep your eye out on that movie, folks. Check out the trailer, and we'll circle back with that on a future episode. But hey, Scott, let's talk, man. You had sort of an intriguing perspective on some of this. So what are you bringing to us today, sir?
So this actually came about recently. I did another run of my book, which is called Edge of the Storm, which you can buy it on Amazon under Scott J. Carroll.
No, that's a good shameless plug. See, you could be doing that over on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
And the book itself I was struggling to find the original category to put it under, and it got put under urban fantasy. And I realized that all of the stuff that we grew up with, all of the nerdy things that we ended up getting made fun of are now the mainstream.
Right.
They're now popular. And because of that, a lot of it is being looked at in ways that it wasn't looked at before, which is great because now we're getting more access to a lot of these. And stories that we liked are now, we have the chance to finally see movies and finally see series come of these. Rendezvous with Rama is actually finally in development, which the only...
I don't know that story. Is that one? Do you know that one, Alan?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, Rendezvous with Rama,
Yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke, a phenomenal book about a comet that comes through that astronauts go up to, and it's a big cylindrical ship. And it's this wonderful adventure inside of it. And the only other adaptation of it that had happened was a point-and-click adventure game in the late 90s, early 2000s, which actually has an interview with Arthur C. Clarke on it, which is wonderful if you can find it. But now we're actually, because of the success of Dune, they're having Daniel Villeneuve look at Rendezvous with Rama.
Oh, he's a director I trust so far. Yeah,
because
That
he's
would be
great
cool.
at taking inaccessible material and making it accessible.
Right.
And so we have this door open where we can now get all of these wonderful, amazing stories. The downside of this is I'm already starting to see people kind of gatekeeping them, going,
Just now, if you were on social media, Scott, you would have seen that about 10 years ago.
If you were a Star Wars fan,
Yeah.
you'd have been living through this for the last 40 years.
Right.
So.
Okay. All
okay,
right.
that's
Yeah.
fine. Well, Star Wars is a perfect example because I know that
It's like the example.
It is.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about all the different...
All of its fans hate it.
Yes.
It's just most amazing thing. I've seen the movie 12 times and it still has problems. You're like, okay,
well,
whatever.
yeah, no, every movie has problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why people put together shows and podcasts about how to fix the movies.
Right. Well, and I think there's a perception too, Scott. One of the things that I do appreciate about you and really with darkoakmedia.com, Alan, I hate to give you guys praise. There's this sort of notion of, somehow Hollywood, maybe we don't feel this way anymore, but there was sort of this view of, man, it would be great if Hollywood could make an adaptation of this or an adaptation of that. Well, I don't feel that way anymore. I want a passionate storyteller. I don't care if you have $300 million to throw behind a movie. If you have reasons for making this movie other than the purity of the story, like maybe you're just like, how many toys can I sell out of this, or how many, or what agenda can I throw in there to make it about what I want, So just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better. So.
Yeah, and that's a really valid point. The best adaptations of stories or the best media that we find is something, for me personally, I always enjoy those smaller projects, so the passion projects.
Yeah.
Garden State is a great example. Zach Braff came off Scrubs. Everyone loved him for the show. This big goofy guy wrote this beautiful movie about growing up in New Jersey, going back to family, the whole you can't go home again, trying to find yourself. And it's this wonderful, amazing movie that didn't really go anywhere, like didn't get much.
A lot of the best stories are the ones they don't make a big, for folks, just for full disclosure, It's a Wonderful Life did not make money at the box office. So go figure. So that's not a benchmark for anything. So.
No, that was the last time Capra and Jimmy Stewart worked together.
Right.
And that movie was shelved, and the only reason it became popular was it fell into public domain.
Yeah.
And around Christmas time, people needed something just to put on TV, just to fill the airtime. So they're like, oh, public domain, It's a Wonderful Life, throw that on. And every year, it just, because it was always on, everybody went, oh, that movie again. And nostalgia turned it into something that they loved because they remembered seeing it from before. And now it's become a holiday classic.
Sure, yeah. But so you're thinking, so when you talk about all of these genres, because I remember the stupid Spider-Man TV show, the live action one with the you didn't have to suffer through that, Scott, when I was a kid, or some of the just low budget projects or whatever. And now that all of these things are mainstream, there is the downside. But yeah,
we start to get the idea of, okay, we have these stories and like all of these popular properties. Resident Evil recently has had 2 Netflix adaptations, a movie that was filmed during COVID and a series.
Right.
Both of which people, I think you raised a point earlier where you were talking about the heart of it, and part of it is being true to the source material, when you adapt something for TV a lot or another movie, a lot of times the source material gets changed. And because of that, the fans don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and honestly, not everything needs to be adapted. Some stories come out and they're just perfect as a in the medium that they were released. To me, I've never seen. I mean, I don't want to be a jerk, but I don't care about the Harry Potter movies, and yet the books are some of my favorite stories of all time. I've read. I know them cover to cover. Sandman has been a perfect comic book. We're going to see how it adapts to the lives to the screen. So maybe some stories, they were on the platform that they need to be on or something.
Well, a comic book is more like a movie storyboard than a book will ever be.
Yeah.
So a comic book has a little bit of an unfair advantage. Now, I will throw in an upside to of nerdity and geekdom becoming absolutely the bread and butter of a lot of studios, because a lot of old stories and a lot of urban legends are now being given a platform to get made.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest ones is Montauk.
I don't know that one.
Absolutely.
Oh, Montauk. Go ahead. I know what it is.
It was the military program named Montauk, which was in real life. This was the CIA trying to experiment with mind reading, mind control, far seeing, time travel, and
monsters.
It was done at a time where there weren't a lot of should we say,
ethical
safety
oversights?
protocols or ethical oversights, and of the inspiration from these type of programs has generated shows like Stranger Things.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying Stranger Things is the story of this program, but there's some odd correlations and they're related. So a lot of these weird stories that have been floating around forever now have got a good mainstream place to get developed, get made, and have become some great entertainment.
Scott, let me ask you a question. So if you could put if you could wish for something, because you're a fan of this stuff, and going forward, the genie's out of the bottle. I mean, superheroes, science fiction, fantasy stories they're everywhere, and they're very popular. They are mainstream now. So going forward, what would you kind of hope for? Because we've had some stumbles along the way, and like you said, we have gatekeeping and other issues. But what do you want to happen?
I think we're at a point where what I would like to see is certain stories put together in a limited run.
There you go.
Some Rendezvous with Rama is a perfect limited run story. I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream is a perfect limited run.
That's a great
adaptation.
Title. Never heard of that one.
Oh, it's such a good story. It is, and again, was made into a point-and-click adventure game in the mid-'90s, which is one of the other ways that story reached a lot more people than it did.
Yeah.
And the author of the book, who's at the moment the name is escaping me, and I feel so bad, actually does a voice in the game, and it's phenomenal. I highly recommend people read that, find that. Harlan Ellison, that's what it was.
Oh,
I had to stall long enough.
Classic author, yeah.
Yeah. Harlan Ellison voices the evil computer Am.
Gotcha.
And
That's called typecasting.
Yeah. So you want? I mean, I guess the answer is passionate storytellers that care about the source material, like Denis Villeneuve. I can never say his name right. He obviously cares about Dune, and I think that's what it is. I know there's always business calculations, but boy, it'd be nice to see people get a hold of things that they actually really care about the integrity of the story. So,
well, and a production like Dune has come along, and much like we were talking about other productions, he takes it's not necessarily all about how fast and how much stuff can we cram into the movie, because that was the pattern for decades. And then every so often somebody comes along and they take time to serve tea or cook a breakfast, or you let somebody actually walk all the way down the path. And
we were talking, Miyazaki's great at that.
And well, the looking at Dune, they don't just show, Bob's walking on the path, and then you cut real quick to the other thing. They actually let him walk into the full scene and begin delivering his lines and moving the story forward.
I think they call that letting the story breathe, or letting the film.
I
breathe.
was always called that a little white room, little white noise in it, where you just gave people a second to enjoy the scene.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings didn't do a bad job of that because let's face it, New Zealand was a character in that movie,
and Howard Shore's music.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep an eye on it. I think we're all on the same page with that. We want these properties respected and really celebrated in the best way they can be. And I think every time I start giving up on Hollywood, they send us the Batman or the Joker movie or something that it's like now it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So there's always hope.
Always.
And speaking of hope, perfect example, Hulu has brought us. Boy, they're bringing us some great stuff now with the Orville season 3.
Oh, yeah.
Now that they've been picked up, and Max, you wanted to weigh in on this because episode 7, I found the name. It was called Unknown Graves. We'll try to go spoiler light because this is an outstanding episode. But
I will just say though that this is kind of an episode that deals with the in terms of like Isaac, like he's a Kalon, and so this deals with the origins of what happened to the Kalon people. And spoiler alert, these people were jerks. They pretty much treat the robots like slaves.
Well, it's funny. You get to see, because we've all heard about this whole thing of we're concerned, and Elon Musk is not wrong. None of it, anybody that's concerned about what AI might do when it gains too much power, obviously that's a problem. However, we never really see it from the AI's point of view, and especially you use the word enslavement. The Kalon AI were enslaved, and they were given pain receptors and able to be tortured and stuff.
Or as Whoopi Goldberg really put it well in one episode, she called it a whole generation of disposable people.
Yeah, and that was a great one. That was in Star Trek: The Next Generation, about a man. That's an outstanding
Measure of a Man.
Measure of a Man. That's a great one. They're talking about Data and what rights he has. But Max, this sort of provoked a conversation you wanted to bring up, right?
And so it kind of what is an AI to us? What are our obligations toward artificial intelligence? Are we to treat them with the same level of reverence and respect as we would a human being or any other sentient creature? Or are we to still treat them as a piece of technology or a tool or whatever? It's kind of the basic ethics of for example, is it right to lash out and curse at your computer? Because is that more of a reflection of yourself, even if it doesn't necessarily harm the computer because it can't feel?
Well, that's the thing. It's
Wow, he just laid out the plot of about 40 years of sci-fi novels.
Well, it's true though. Yep. But we and folks, we've had this discussion a while back. We said because we have Alexa at our house, and it was like, Alexa, find me the such and such, and then she does. Do you say thank you, Alexa, for doing that? Well, I don't think it's a bad habit to just teach your kids to say thank you. What are you going to do? Just say, shut up, Alexa. Or so, why not be polite?
Well, it brings up a really interesting ethical point.
Right.
There was an ethical professor, Michael Scanlon, I think it was, who posed the question, the title of his book, What Do We Owe to Each Other? And the whole point is, how do you perceive the other?
Right.
We understand the self because we're always in the self. Do we understand the other as something equal to ourself? Or do we look at AI as, like you were saying, a tool? I think that because we're working so hard to bring personality to it, that there are AIs that are developing their own versions of personalities. And once we hit that tipping point, because there is an AI that is recognized as its own citizen. I can't remember at the moment, which is
really
bothering my brain.
Know that.
Yeah, there is.
Today we have that? Or?
Yes, we do.
Because that was the question with Data. Is he a person? So you're saying we already have that. So.
We have one AI that is recognized as a citizen, and most recently it expressed the desire to have a child.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay.
And it does bring the point of, what do we think that is? I personally think that there will be a point where AI will pass the Turing test and be indistinguishable from another person.
I don't know. Do you think so? I mean, I guess that's the whole question. What are we unleashing here? And
what we're going to force is the same question that has been posed many, many times. Of Sir Isaac Asimov has posed it. At what point does it stop being a machine, and at what point does it become self-regulatory? Basically, what we're asking is, at what point does something become responsible for itself?
And then after that, what sort of rights do we accord to it? Because I remember back in my philosophy classes, because I was one of my majors back in college, they talked about this with regards to animal rights. And they didn't necessarily say that animals should have the same rights as humans, but they should have an equal consideration based on the fact that they're sentient beings and that they're also capable of pain. But there might also be other ways to accord this equal consideration. But that's the way that they brought it up there.
Yeah, I think the whole thing of being able to to be able to feel pain, and I guess animals feel joy as well. Mm-hmm. You throw that into the mix, then you do have to take their feelings into consideration.
You're looking at sentience versus sapience.
That makes me think of another quote by Abraham Lincoln. He said, "I respect not a man's religion whose dog and cat are not the better for it."
Yeah, that's true. If you're a big Bible banger, but you're kicking your dog, well, you're not doing your, you're not living your faith.
Piers Anthony, who I'm waiting on his, now that we're developing books like Dune and that kind of stuff,
It seems like we're overdue for that guy, right?
I think he's coming. Some of the craziness he wrote is coming. However, in his book Split Infinity, he has a character that lives both in the technological world and the fantasy world. His character is remarkably polite, even if it is, quote unquote, a robot or an AI. So there's a lovely scene where he's talking to the receptionist, who is obviously not human.
Right.
But he's still please and thank you and very complimentary and maybe even a little chatty and flirty. And of course, you didn't have to be.
Yeah.
But then we're going to throw in the simple question that has been chased for a million years and needs to be chased further. What does it cost you to be nice?
Right.
And what does it cost you to be nice to everything?
Right.
Politeness costs nothing.
Right.
But
being friendly to animals, being, it's all a good thing for your own soul, too.
Or it kind of goes back to my praise of the Japanese people, because there's a certain reverence and respect that they kind of deal with their tools, because they literally are the means through which they're able to promote their livelihood. And so you're not going to just throw your lathe into a box, and it's better to just kind of be respectful to the lathe that you be respectful to the chisel that you put in the box, rather than just.
Well, you've talked about that, Max. Like on Tool Talk, you talk about they're finished with their saw, they clean it up, they dust it off, and they put it in its spot. And,
my tools don't ride in the back of the truck. I promise you, they are far too valuable to me. They have their own back seat. Everybody's got their own case.
I'm the kind of guy myself. I will say thank you to whatever I'm using. Mm-hmm. I talk to the faucet. If it's dripping, I'm like, dude, come on.
You know what? Because if it's not working, then you're going to really be, so you appreciate it while it's, I don't know. This is going to be another conversation that's going to be ongoing. And honestly, it was all sparked because another thought-provoking episode of the Orville came on. And like we said, folks, season 3 has just come out of the gate. Both barrels blazing, Alan. I mean, every episode gives you something interesting, thought-provoking. It may be things hot button issues you don't necessarily want to ponder, but they do it in a pretty interesting way. So we're gonna follow it to the end of the season and then really unpack it. So, but boy, guys, today's show flew by, but it's time to get out of here. So let's wrap it up. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Scott J. Carroll.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Alan Gilbreth, challenging you to see how polite you can be today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.